So students are mainly international relations.
We call it international studies. We study broader international relations, but yeah, maybe
Area studies.
it's more like economy, international law, international economy, and international relations.
Okay.
So I is quick.
Quick, that's right.
Professor Kuik
I
is-
speak fairly quickly.
So now we can also we will also have a online
Audience.
audience. Okay for you if we record the session or you prefer offline?
Yeah, record is fine, but you won't upload on YouTube, no, right? It's
No,
for you.
but later we have a website
I see.
and put all
As you like.
but it's,
Yeah.
seven of you.
I guess we can decide later on, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If I say something silly, then better not. I'm academic, you know, how academics and then.
Engineer strategy, right?
Right. I'm just kidding, yeah.
No,
We can decide later.
So I just want to do a test. Francisco, ¿nos escuchas? Solo para saber si está todo funcionando.
Sí, se escucha perfectamente.
Ah, se escucha perfectamente. Ok. No, solo un minuto porque
So, Professor Kuik, when did you arrive to Chile?
A few hours ago. Yeah, just around noon time and
But the
and I was telling actually I stopped over in Sydney.
Okay.
And then there was a direct flight.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's I guess a time good spent to have a sense of Pacific, right?
Yeah.
Crossing from Sydney to San Diego. And this is actually my very first trip to Chile, to San Diego.
To South America? Also?
Second time.
Second time.
First time was to Rio de Janeiro. Then it was like 10 years ago. So conference. Always more academic activities at conference rather than tourists. Yeah. So let's see. How about
How long are you going to be here?
until Saturday?
Okay, so you will have time to see around.
The main activity is actually for a conference organized by Inter-American Dialogues.
Okay, the
Yeah, Thursday and also Friday, like a 2-day event. They're bringing some Southeast Asian scholars to for the meeting and to have like interactions and exchanges. Do you all travel to Asia a lot?
So often, but this year we have no. I've been twice in Shanghai this year.
Oh, Shanghai. Okay.
He studied in Shanghai.
Full time, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Ah, yeah, this year you went to
Twice. Yeah.
Is it for
Once for Shanghai Forum,
yeah, okay.
and the other one, the university organized a visit to different universities in Beijing and in also in Shanghai.
Oh, that's exciting. So was it a direct flight or you?
No, there's no direct.
un minuto porque
But or even through Sydney or the US. Or Toronto.
So a few options.
Few options, yeah. But
The best
at
is-
least 3 hours.
Yeah. It's good to have some transit and
Last year we went to Japan, Korea, and China as well.
okay.
Basically,
Thailand, yeah.
But next year we will go to there.
I hope so.
To Thailand. Once you're in Thailand, maybe I know something will bring you to Kuala Lumpur. We have just one flight.
But next year our idea is to visit new destinations because
Southeast Asia will be the place, right?
yeah. Vietnam, for example, but
Yeah.
also it'd be great if we can visit you in
Kuala Lumpur.
Kuala Lumpur, also Indonesia. I think these three countries would be great for because we need to develop more relations with so
That's right. Yeah, I think many convergence
Yeah.
interest and also outlook between Latin America and also Southeast Asia. Many ways. So look forward to let me know.
Yeah, I will let you know. Yeah, so maybe will be because also our university will organize a forum with the university. So we wait right now when this forum will be, and then we can confirm when we go to Asia again. I hope in June, something like that. Maybe. Yeah.
We have only one season, so you can choose.
Okay, Juan, si quieres podemos comenzar.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, especially Professor Kuik, for being here, for visiting here at the University of Chile, and for giving you our interesting speech on navigating the narrative in the Pacific and Southeast Asian perspective. We thank you very much again for being here. For us, having this kind of opportunities is very interesting because we, as an institute, we are very interested in promoting studies about Asian issues. We have a master in Asian studies, and for us, it's a very important initiative. And also, it's important to have you here to know more about the discussion of different issues regarding Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director, for your very kind introduction and also invitation. And a very good afternoon, everyone. I don't have a list, so I guess I would say hi to professors, to ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, both here, but also those who are joining online. And I would like to also thank Malaysian Embassy, particularly Chaji Abang Rashid, and also his team, his colleagues, for the kind arrangement. So when Abang Rashid first suggested me to have a sharing session here, he actually chose 2 or 3 topics, and eventually we decided to focus on this one, primarily because of the Pacific factor. We knew many of us, this is my very first trip to Chile, but even many of us who have not got a chance to travel to Chile, we know about Chile for a number of things, but many of those things are about Pacific. First, of course, it's about the APEC. We knew APEC is something that we have in common, membership, international membership other than United Nations. And then later on, we also know that about the P4, right, Pacific P4, which later became TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, which again, Chile and Malaysia and a few others, we have a shared membership. And we also understand that Chile became, one of ASEAN's developmental partners in 2019. So before we talk about Indo-Pacific, which is the topic today, I think Asia-Pacific or just Pacific is the one that bind us together, even though we might not have a chance to interact in person in many ways. But we knew that we are bound by a Pacific Ocean. And today I'm not talking about APEC or P4 or TPP, but something I would say broader, which it's Indo-Pacific. A big thing, especially in Asia, in Southeast Asia, and some say that in Europe as well. And we can know from the term Indo-Pacific, this can be a geographical term. And Indo-Pacific refers to the 2 big vast oceans of Indian Ocean and then the Pacific Ocean. But we all know, especially those who are on international studies, we know this is not just Indo-Pacific. It's not just a geographical term, but it's actually a geopolitical term. Geopolitical term because it's really about the power dynamics. Power dynamics among the competing powers, US and China, and also their partners, their allies, their friends, so on and so forth. And I like to use the term middle states. Middle states are those sovereign states who are sandwiched between the 2 competing powers. It doesn't matter, you are in Latin America, you are in Southeast Asia, India, South Asia, Central Asia, we all share something in common these days. When geopolitics, needs geoeconomics when big powers are competing to win the heart and the mind of everyone. We share something in common. So with that brief background, I thought I want to kind of highlight what I'm going to share. It's certainly something in common as Indo-States in the era of great power rivalry, in the era of a US-China rivalry, how Middle States are navigating the dynamics. And dynamics, as we know, there are always two sides of the same coin. Opportunities and pressures come hand in hand. You cannot say that we want to choose one side over the other. So with that background and with the subtitle here, the Southeast Asian perspective, with my very strong Malaysian accent, you know that you are going to hear not just a Southeast Asian perspective, but also a Malaysian perspective as well. But I'm wearing academic hat, so whatever I say only represent myself. And with that, very quickly, let me move on to the first slide. First thing first, about the Indo-Pacific and also the geopolitical dynamics. And I must also, as we are getting ready, I must also say that this is actually not my usual voice. I lost my voice because of a session just a few days ago to a Malaysian Defense College students. It was like 2.5 hour session. So I kind of like interact for 150 minutes. After 100 minutes, I guess my voice became like this. I think the good thing is my voice right now is more sentimental than my usual voice. But the next time you might hear something different, more original. Yeah. So with that, Indo-Pacific, and as I said, it's mainly about the US-China rivalry. And I would say that the word Indo-Pacific can be relatively new. Relatively new in the sense that some would say that before 2017, very few people actually heard about that. Some in Indonesia might say that they began to talk about Indo-Pacific for their own reasons. Australia, India, Japan would claim that primarily because of Quad arrangement, Quad QUAD, Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. It's something that began in 2007, but it did not go anywhere, 2007. But 10 years later, in 2017, Quad was revived and come with the revival of Quad as a intergovernmental cooperation. Quad thesis 4, it refers to US, Japan, India, and also Australia. But fundamentally, I would say that even though Indo-Pacific is something that most associated with Quad, but the main primary principal driver is really about the two superpowers, US and China, and US-China competition, and obviously US-China rivalry. And we have a few points here, but you could see that those points are really about what students or academics of international studies are very familiar with. We talk about Cold War 2.0 in a sense that some say that with the intensifying rivalry, competition between the two superpowers, we are witnessing Cold War round 2.0. Again, we have a question mark there because again, I think we all know that in the academic and also diplomatic world, this is there is still no consensus as to whether or not the current competition can be called as Cold War 2.0. But we know that the reason why observers, experts talk about Cold War 2.0 primarily it kind of entails a number of dynamics that are parallel to what we witnessed during the Cold War 1.0 that lasted for half a century, right? From late 1940s until late 1980s. So now, US-China rivalry, again, I think there are lots of parallels. Some are comparing the current US-China rivalry with the US-Soviet rivalry during the Cold War period, right? But some would say that it's there are some parallels, but there are also some differences. Differences even within the US-China rivalry in the sense that the current rivalry is more intense, more confrontation, and also more unpredictable. And we use the word unpredictable even before Trump 2.0. These days, people are talking about the Trump 2.0, but during Trump 1.0, some say that it was already an era of unpredictability. We don't know how things would evolve, but we can safely say that if there is one thing that we can distinguish the current US-China rivalry with the US-Soviet rivalry during Cold War is that these days, before US-Soviet rivalry, the competition were primarily on the military transport, military security, arms race, so on and so forth. But today, US and China, they are something different, primarily because of the huge economic interdependence between US and China, something missing from US-Soviet back then. You are seeing the two big powers now are competing not just militarily, high politics, but also economic or low politics as well. So US-China rivalry is not the kind of a new for students of world politics, but it's new because of it is very different from the US-Soviet in the sense that the big power are competing not just militarily, but also non-militarily. And non-militarily in many sense, economic cooperation is one. And we know that connectivity and infrastructure cooperation, some would recall immediately the three alphabet, right? BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, or some would call it Yidan Yilu. And I know Chile, it's one of the most active and enthusiastic in this part of the world. In Southeast Asia, something parallel. So in part because of China's BRI presence in the region, there are a lot of pushback. So you are seeing there are some competition, not just in the maritime, military, security aspect, as I said, also economic aspect, infrastructure, connectivity, and during COVID, because of the supply chain disruption, we are also seeing competition along those supply chain as well. 5G, it's another aspect, and then the semiconductor with chips. We know that there is a Chip 4 alliance that involving US, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea, and Netherlands is somehow involved as well. All those are evidence to support the earlier observation. The two superpowers in our time are competing not just militarily, but also economically in one way or another. And we have already mentioned the quadrilateral security dialogue, which shows that the current power competition is mainly about US and China, but not just only US and China. There are clearly the second tier powers of those members of Quad, India, Australia, and Japan are involved, and there are many other things. Later on, we are going to talk about, the Indo-Pacific narrative. There are some keywords. There are some discourse that we are hearing together with, the discussion about why Indo-Pacific is needed, so on and so forth. But I will keep that later on. So what I intend to do, especially for those who are joining online who might not be familiar with Indo-Pacific, I thought this slide will talk about the what issue. What is Indo-Pacific? I mentioned that it is not just a geographical term, but also a geopolitical term. And it's mainly about US-China rivalry, but not just about US and China, also other second-tier powers. So with the what issue, I think we are more ready to talk about the who issue. What, who, and then the so what. Then I would use the remaining time to talk about the narrative from Southeast Asia perspective. So who are the players in the Pacific? I already mentioned Quad, but it will be wrong, it will be a mistake to assume that Indo-Pacific is just about Quad, since Quad is the one who started to push for it. And we knew that as Quad was revived in 2017, all members of Quad, one after another, launched their Indo-Pacific document. But it did not stop at that. We are seeing 2019, there was another kind of turning point. 2019 was a turning point for Indo-Pacific, primarily because we are seeing more players are involved, or more players are involved along the two chessboards of military chessboard, but also non-military chessboard. And there are many indicators that we can share here. And as today is the 2024 end of July, right? All this evidence, the list will go on, but the patterns remain. The players, the platforms would remain, and in fact, you're going to see a more and more crowded kind of scenario. Okay, we mentioned about Quad members, and as I said, 2019 was a turning point. Why? We are witnessing 2019 onwards, European powers, one after another, are launching their own Indo-Pacific documents. They are not part of Quad, but they do see eye to eye as to the necessary to emphasize the Indo-Pacific that is associated with the rules-based, the kind of transparent, and also the sovereignty, equality, and all that. We will talk about that later on. But European powers started from France, and then Germany, Netherlands, and then EU as a group has launched Indo-Pacific document in their own version in one way or another. And AUKUS. AUKUS stands for Australia, UK, US, and that was 2021. During the COVID period, we knew that there was a huge announcement. These three countries are forming some describe as a security pact, some use the word alliance, but the countries cannot deny. But we do know that AUKUS is very much a security driven, and it's the nuclear kind of a powered arrangement was very much at the center of the talk. We can deal with that later on. But here we are just using these three arrangements, right? Quad and European powers and AUKUS as an example to show Indo-Pacific is involving more and more powers, and they are not just within Asia, they are across the vast Indo-Pacific, Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and there are also others that are going beyond. Canada, for example, is one of the latest kind of countries to launch Indo-Pacific document. There was 2022. Around the same time when South Korea was launching their own document as well. So as we talk, and over the last few years, as all these Quad AUKUS are becoming realities, and realities that are gaining a momentum, we are also hearing some new possible arrangements. For example, at the height of Quad, during COVID, there were talks about Quad Plus. So meaning that Quad will remain as 4. They are the core members, but they can have added layers, right? Plus, that's very much like ASEAN formula, right? You have ASEAN plus 1, ASEAN plus 3, so on and so forth. So you have something parallel. I guess it's a diplomatic innovation or strategic innovation, where ASEAN, the Quad class is being talked about. But again, here I put 2 question marks, just as an indicator, I would say that it is not a reality yet, but it was talked about. And at the height of the talk about Quad class, 3 countries were being listed and mentioned as the Quad class, possible Quad class members. These 3 countries are New Zealand, and then South Korea, and also anybody? The Quad class countries. So it's New Zealand, South Korea, and Vietnam. So these are the 3 countries which you can see a number of similarities with them, right? They are very different. Some are communist, some are democratic countries, but they do have something in common. They are concerned about China, the China factor. And therefore, it shows that in the eyes of Southeast Asia, many countries, Quad AUKUS, Quad class, quote unquote, and all that are very much driven by one factor, the China factor. And which is actually one of the main reasons why Southeast Asia has been very cautious and nervous and even prudent, because we do not want to be associated with those kind of like targeting a China arrangement, but we'll go into that later on. And then the latest talk, this is very hot, I would say, especially after Japan attended the Japan US Philippine summit a few months ago. We're beginning to talk about the AUKUS, not AUKUS 2.0, but AUKUS Pillar 2. So Pillar 2 refers to those technological arrangements. Right? Pillar 1 will be primarily the nuclear submarine and so on and so forth. But Pillar 2 will be those that are not members of AUKUS, but you can also, the same logic of the class partner, right? So there are a number of countries being talked about. We already mentioned Japan. And then there were talks about Canada is very key, but recent development might indicate otherwise. And again, there are a few other countries that South Korea, for example, might be also a prospective members of AUKUS Pillar 2, if these are the things that are really taking shape. And a few weeks ago, we also read news about the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. And there was a time that there were lots of analyses talking about the expansion of NATO as an factor in Indo-Pacific, right? And that's not entirely new. In fact, 1-2 years ago already, they were talking about NATO might be opening a small liaison office in Tokyo. That was the first time when people talk about the possibility of NATO making a presence in Asia. But now we are talking about NATO's possible presence in the Indo-Pacific. And IP4, what is IP4? Earlier on, we mentioned about P4, right? That was very much economic, which Chile is part of the core player. But IP4 is very not geoeconomics, but mainly geopolitics, right? Indo-Pacific 4. Which are the Indo-Pacific 4? Maybe we can get some quick responses. Who are those that they are not part of AUKUS, but they are Indo-Pacific 4 that are being talked about? Any guess?
The big ones.
Yeah.
The big ones.
Yeah, clearly they are kind of like players and key players. Japan, South Korea, right? Yeah, because they are not AUKUS, right?
Australia.
Yeah, Australia, it's a part of AUKUS, right? Yeah, and then yeah, but it is certainly considered as all those IT players. And then New Zealand. New Zealand is also being talked about, and there are more and more, which is those countries who are not NATO members, but they were invited. And those are, I think, the reason that the converging reasons that they are being called as IP4. And whether or not there will be an IP5 and all that, if Canada would also come on board, I think it will be everybody's guessing. But we won't have time for that. But what we need to mention is that, again, earlier on I mentioned about the twin chessboards being the main chessboard that are witnessing the US-China rivalry. Here we are seeing not just US-China, but the second-tier powers. They are also competing, involving in a number of ways. These days, for example, you would read news about US partners, US allies, not just in Asia, but also in Europe. They are also involving sending military assets to South China Sea. They are also making open statements about Taiwan. All these are relatively new. I would say 5-10 years ago, those things are quite unusual in Asia, in Southeast Asia. But you are seeing more and more. And as I described, those are evidence, new evidence, and ongoing evidence, and more to come, to show that it's a US-China competition, but we are seeing a more crowded geopolitical competitions in military chessboard, but also in the non-military chessboard. And here, I think we have already mentioned South China Sea. We have mentioned Taiwan Strait. And on the non-military aspect, you could see that all those, some say the alphabet soup, right? I remember, many outside of Southeast Asia talk about ASEAN is about alphabet soup. There are lots of, ARF, ASEAN plus Great APT. You have a lot of AFTA alphabet soup, right? But now you are seeing lots of alphabet soup within the Indo-Pacific. And all these latest alphabet soup, the alphabet arrangements, they are very much about being projected, presented as alternatives to BRI, because they want to kind of provide more arrangement, more possible alternatives for developing countries in the global south, that you do have to just choose BRI when you want to develop infrastructure and connectivity. You can consider many of those. Japan, under the late when the late Abe was still running the country, he was the first actually, who saw the strategic needs, the political needs to have alternative to BRI. So after BRI was launched in 2013, 2015, you saw Japan launch about the PQI, Partnership for Quality Infrastructure. I joke about Japan, it's quite naughty in this sense, right? Use the word quality to imply that the other arrangement the quality might be questionable. But somehow that's the word that being used. And then we know that Japan also hold the fort when US under Trump first day withdraw from TPP. Japan make a very strong efforts and push to transform TPP 12 into CPTPP 11. And now we are seeing new members. And those are kind of among the layers. We are seeing also other arrangement by some of these mechanisms that we mentioned. Quite, for example, launched the so-called Blue Dot network, again as the alternative to BRI. And you saw other players, other partners are launching something similar surrounding the connectivity and infrastructure cooperation. And the target partnerships would be those in the global south, not just in Southeast Asia, but also those in Europe, Central Asia, South Asia, Latin America, I guess. G7 had the B3W, Build Back Better World, right? B3W, and then GII, Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment. And EU is the latest to have this similar arrangement called Global Gateway. In Malaysia, for example, there is a cooperation that is very much a done deal in Lumut. And EU under Global Gateway is also exploring new cooperation in Sarawak, and then more to come. And US Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, will be the latest. And some in Southeast Asia, I guess elsewhere as well, we are comparing IPEF under Biden administration with TPP, right? I think many common voices in Southeast Asia, at least, is that IPEF is good. Economic cooperation is good, but IPEF is not TPP. There is no market access, right? So the attraction is much less. And then with the upcoming presidential election in the US, I think there will be a greater uncertainty as to whether IPEF will be sustained beyond 2024. So those are among the things, right? And now let's talk about, after talking about what and who, let's talk about so what. So what Indo-Pacific, right? And again, I'm using Southeast Asia as an example, but I believe the dynamics, the so what dynamics should be applicable to many other middle states in other regions. For example, I mentioned about benefits and risks. There are two sides of the policy coin. There is no policy that only talk about benefits. With benefits, it always comes with risks, challenges, drawbacks. You cannot choose one. You have to take both of them. Because of that, you have a dilemma. So again, those are key issues that within Southeast Asia. There are, of course, many differences in a diverse region like Southeast Asia, but those are among the common denominators. From Indonesia to Malaysia to Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, Brunei, and also the newer members of the CLMV. And CLMV stands for Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and also Vietnam. Next year, most likely, we are going to see a latest member, Timor-Leste, when it joins. So all these countries are seeing something similar, the benefits, but also the challenges and also risks, and hence the dilemma. Those are among the key ones. Benefits, I think a good example would be a semiconductor. As a US-China rivalry expanded from military to trade economy, we are seeing US-China trade war resulting in the new trends that we call as China plus one. China plus one that you know are going beyond government. It's about the corporations, big economies who are having economic investment presence in China. Because of all those risks of decoupling and all that, you're moving out because of COVID, because of the supply chain and disruption. You're moving out from China. So who are benefited? Many countries in the Middle States or Global South are being benefited. Malaysia and a few other countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, for example, Indonesia, Thailand to some extent are benefited because why? So as those are moving out from China, many will go to somewhere closer. Southeast Asia, because of proximity, we are benefited. India and others are also benefited. So in short term, we are seeing all these benefits in economic terms. We are also seeing benefits in terms of geopolitics, right? Geopolitics in what sense? Southeast Asia become center of courtship. All the big powers, not just superpowers, second-tier powers as they launch Indo-Pacific strategy, as they launch the new geopolitical blueprint, they are all having something in common. Other than strengthening their own like-minded circles, they are also all targeting at Southeast Asia as the center of courtship that they want to win over either individual countries or ASEAN as a group. Why? There are many reasons. I would say there are three reasons that are the most important. Southeast Asia, it's a big market with a young population. So population is growing, market is growing. So economic importance is always there. Second is geography. It's at the center of Indo-Pacific, between the two oceans. Where is the converging point? Southeast Asia is a converging point. Countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia will say that we are at the center, Malaysia would like to say that we are not just between the Indian Ocean on the west and the Pacific Ocean on the east. We are also between the continental north and also the maritime south. We are at the center. But Southeast Asia in general, geographical centrality is one attraction. The third reason that why Southeast Asia is the center of courtship by all powers, competing powers, is because of the diplomatic arrangement of ASEAN as a group. So I won't have time to go to that, but I think this one slide, we can just take 1 minute to show the point that why Southeast Asia is becoming a center of courtship and why ASEAN and ASEAN-led diplomatic arrangement is the big reason. You could see that when we talk about ASEAN, we are not just talking about the ASEAN of this small circle. So this circle indicates you will see some year because of there are new members joining different groups. So today, when we talk about ASEAN, we are not just talking about the ASEAN 5, ASEAN 6, ASEAN 10, or even the ASEAN 11. We are actually talking about the ASEAN-led institutional ecosystems that include all big powers, all key players of our time. We are seeing not just the Northeast Asian economic powerhouses of China, Japan, and Korea. We have the ASEAN +3, and it was formed when Malaysia was the chair of ASEAN. We are also seeing an East Asia Summit where New Zealand, Australia, and India joining the group, forming East Asia Summit. Some of you will remember RCEP, right? Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that came up when during the COVID time. And RCEP today is the largest economic arrangement. RCEP would not be possible without the ASEAN and the ASEAN-led mechanism, without the East Asia Summit. And those are different arrangements, economic, diplomatic, but those are military and security in nature. So ADMM, right, ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus has 8 countries from the very beginning. Which are the 8 countries? ASEAN 10, plus Northeast Asia 3, and then plus the other 3. We of East Asia Summit, and then the US and also Russia was also members, and so we become from 18 to 20. ASEAN Regional Forum is even bigger, but all this shows that ASEAN, as I say, ASEAN and ASEAN-led mechanism is a big diplomatic attraction. You are connected to ASEAN, you are going to connect to not just 1 or 2 countries. You are going to connect to the entire region of ASEAN region and also the plus, which allow us to increase some diplomatic arrangement. Before we go into that, let me with the remaining time, let me very quickly highlight a number of risks and also dilemmas that we are facing. I think earlier examples shows the benefits that we are getting: economic benefits, diplomatic benefits, strategic benefits as well, because nobody wants to put all eggs in any basket. We want the more the merrier. And this is so not just for economic development, this is so also for strategy and security. With the center of courtship, we found the space to diversify. Strategically and economically are actually getting more and more. But as I said, there is no free lunch. You get something, prepare to face something. So there are clearly some risks and also dilemmas, and those are beyond us. You cannot say that, can I just subscribe to this and exclude me from that? Sorry, it comes together. So what kind of risk that we are talking about? Top of the list will be entrapment, right? As US-China rivalry escalate the intensity, we are seeing the greater possibility that the big power rivalry might become big power clash, big power conflict and all that. Southeast Asia, because of the geography, because of South China Sea, because of Taiwan, will be among the first to be entrapped. Nobody in Southeast Asia, regardless of who are the leaders, are interested in entrapping into Philippines because of South China Sea, because of what is going on between Beijing and Manila, already 1 foot in. But other in the region, we do not want to be entrapped. And we also do not want to put all eggs in any basket. Thailand is another treaty ally with US in Southeast Asia. But Thailand made it very clear that I'm not putting all eggs in the US basket. I'm not taking sides, and this is something that everybody in Southeast Asia will talk about. We are also worried the risk of now economic bifurcation, decoupling, might not stop in economic and technology bifurcation. Economic bifurcation might result in strategic polarization. Then you are going to see a US camp and non-US camp or China camp. Southeast Asia do not want to have repeat of Cold War scenario of polarization. So we are getting more nervous. We are also worried that the ASEAN might be marginalized. All the examples that were shown in the earlier slides, they are all non-ASEAN mechanisms. If you put yourself in ASEAN shoes, naturally we are worried as all those non-ASEAN mechanisms gain more momentum. What will happen to ASEAN in 10 years' time? We might become irrelevant. So we are nervous. And so all these dilemmas is being captured here. We want constraint. We do want more power involvement to constrain China. China is there forever for ASEAN countries. We are kind of cautious because we do want to ensure productive, positive, stable relationship. But we also know that big powers are big powers. As power grows, they might act and react in different ways. So we do want a positive, stable balance of power that was mentioned in the Indo-Pacific analysis to constrain China. But we do not want constraint to become containment in the Cold War context. Containment will be very clear-cut polarization. Which camp are you in? We do not want. And we know that there is only a thin line, right, between constrainment and containment, which is the reason why countries like Indonesia and Malaysia express concern. When AUKUS, Australia, UK, US was announced, we express concern because we understand that when you have more and more disarrangement, China will also at the same time becoming more assertive and aggressive, then we will be closer to the containment situation and nobody will be benefited from that. We will get back to the decoupling and diversification later on. But now let me very quickly to move into the narrative that we talk about. There are many words that are being associated in the discussion on Indo-Pacific in the mainstream media. Right? You go to New York Times, Washington Post, economists and all those mainstream outlets, the opinion, public opinion shapers. These are among the keywords that you keep hearing. Southeast Asia will pay attention. But sometimes our reaction is that we subscribe to them partially. Partially meaning what? Yeah, we see all the good things in all those keywords here, but we are also cautious about the kind of possible drawbacks. Let's take a rules and a rule-based order. So in the Indo-Pacific narrative, the centrality or the necessity to maintain, preserve rules-based order has been repeated. You are at the core of the narrative. And usually it is also associated with a liberal international order. So in that perspective, we make a distinction about the rules and rules-based order and also a liberal international order. We say that we support the ideals of a rules-based, but we are critical about the implementation. All the good things, are being implemented only partially. Southeast Asia had been very critical even before the rise of Indo-Pacific, saying that when it comes to implementation, order and all that, always there are double standards. You implement selectively, and therefore Southeast Asia is critical. And then so much so that sometimes we joke about liberal international order is neither liberal nor international nor order. You do see some chaos, right? Just look at the Middle East and look at even Europe today, right? So the next word worth mentioning is like-minded. With the Indo-Pacific, you hear like-minded all the time. Almost every leaders, officials, and also analysts talk about like-minded, right? But no one actually defines what do you mean by like-minded. Southeast Asia is curious. Why? We are center of courtship. You are trying to sell your partnership, but we want to know when you mention like-minded, what do you mean, right? US and the mainstream powers do not have to do the explanation. You will not face this kind of what do you mean by that in the mainstream circle of transatlantic and also in Northeast Asia, in Japan and South Korea. Everybody understands what you mean by like-minded. Because why? In those contexts, right? US allies in Europe and Asia, Northeast Asia, like-minded in the three dimensions overlap, but not so in the global south. Certainly not Southeast Asia. Because why? Like-minded always been politically, you are liberal democracy. In Europe, no problem. Northeast Asia, Japan, South Korea, no problem. Nobody asks. But in Southeast Asia, out of 10 ASEAN countries, only 3 were invited by a Biden administration when Biden wanted to have, the democratic summits, right? Summit of democracies. Only 3 were invited. Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia were invited. The rest were not. Not even Vietnam and Singapore, who are like-minded in terms of strategy, right? Strategy meaning what? Those who have the guts of standing up against China. When China is doing something aggressive, are you going to speak up, right? So you do in 10 other countries, some are more vocal than the others, some are more quiet than the others. So strategically, like-minded means that Vietnam, Philippines, and Singapore, right? Who are more ready to speak out against China when it's necessary. Economically, like-minded means that those who are willing to move together for recoupling. Southeast Asia, we feel that we are in a very awkward situation because we are like-minded in one sense, but not like-minded in other sense, right? So we avoid it. When we use like-minded, we refer to ASEAN countries. And ASEAN countries, we do have a very different the political countries. Vietnam, Laos remain communist. The rest will say, including Indonesia and Malaysia and Philippines, will say none of our business because of that's how their own people choose, right? But we want to be pragmatic and all that. So with that, very quickly again, so what are ASEAN countries reacting to all these benefits, risks, and also dynamics that come together with the Indo-Pacific dynamics? So we can have 3 days and 3 nights of discussion. We don't have time. So I have only 3 points to capture what I think ASEAN countries are doing. If there are IR students or IR theorists here, we would know that we will use the word the balancing bandwagoning, right? But in Southeast Asia, in Middle States these days, very few countries are actually balancing and bandwagoning. Many countries are doing what we call as hedging. I know in Latin America, in Chile particularly, you have a term called active non-alignment, right? So something similar, right? You might use different terms, but we do something similar. Why is that? Middle states, especially those who are weaker and smaller, is our DNA, right? Survival DNA. You know that when big guys, giants, elephants are fighting, be careful. What do? Active non-alignment. In Southeast Asia, we call active neutrality. Neutrality here, it means that we are not taking sides. I know that big powers always compete. It's their DNA to compete. You cannot stop that. But it will affect you, especially if you are, take sides, right? So active neutrality, active non-alignment is what we have been doing. But we are also doing something extra, right? Inclusive diversification. You need to diversify, not just within one camp. You need to diversify inclusively with everybody who are competing, right? If you are only diversifying within one camp, then sorry, you might declare you are neutral, you are non-alignment, but in a way you are already taking sides, right? But inclusive diversification will be the one that ensure you will be continue to be neutral, inclusive. Finally, prudent fallback cultivation. In lay person terms, very simple. It's about, again, human instinct of what if scenario. You need to have plans B when things are uncertain. As uncertainty grows, you need to have more plans B rather than less. So fallback position. What if China become more aggressive? What if US reduce the commitment? What if US-China rivalry escalate into big power armed conflict? None of these what if scenario is desirable, they are undesirable. And we all know our instinct, we know that they are possible, although they are highly undesirable. So what are you going to do? You will do what we call as a fallback position. So fallback position in the sense that there will be more and more plans being implemented. US airlines in Europe and Asia, they are getting more nervous under the shadow of Trump 2.0. So whatever mechanism that we talk about, they are part and parcel of their plan state. Southeast Asian countries, we see others' plan state can be our plan state as well. But we will not say that it is about one power against the other. We will continue to be active, inclusive, and prudent. And that's very much, the scenario and the policy actions that we are witnessing. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let me stop here. And then I know perhaps there will be lots of questions, comments, and half questions and critical comments. The more the merrier. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kuik and Dr. It was a very enriching and stimulating lecture. We share a lot of worries and questions here in Latin America, but with a lot of substantial differences I would like to express. We are currently we are thinking very hard about this decoupling of the risk in new geopolitical environment and how we can navigate this or adapt to it. And like common sense will say that, yeah, absolutely, no. Southeast Asia and Latin America are maybe the last two regions in the world who are not in one of the sides. And so explicitly, no. Europe is a military satellite of the US, etc. We know that already, no. But Latin America and Southeast Asia, they still the object of, we call it courtship, no, we call it influence, no, or competition. However, the difference are still quite big, so I would like to know your opinion about it. This comparison is, improvising a little bit. It's not. It's more like thoughts and analysis itself, right? But does the edging strategy make sense anymore? I used your paper in 2008 about the edging essence in my classes. I got this paper. Students like it. And they understand that this non-active alignment that we discuss here in Chile is not so new as it pretends. It's an old school concept translated here in this term, but it's not so new as it wants to present itself as. But to talk about non-edging strategy of small and middle countries in 2008 makes sense, but doesn't make it anymore, especially in the South Asian region. When I was listening to you, I was thinking, actually, maybe we are a bit luckier than we thought here in Latin America in this geopolitical scenario, because this alphabet soup of the Asian security new framework is kind of worrisome. No? You are talking about non-Asian strategy, I understand that, but all your neighbors, the main powers in the region, they are getting into arms race, isn't it? South Korea wants to join the AUKUS. Maybe I understand because it has a very strong industry for exports of weapons, isn't it? It's like the new economic engine that they may start or not soon. And what else? No? And Australia is getting the nuclear, submarine nuclear technology from the US. The technological transfer, I would never thought it was possible to witness a few years ago. I'm talking about 3 or 4 years ago, not like 10 years ago. No? So you have these two examples. No? Australia is getting nuclear weapons, nuclear engine, for weapons for their submarines, and South Korea wants to contribute to the industrial weapon arms race of the region. So can you really still have this edging strategy in the ASEAN countries that are smaller? I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit skeptical about it, because recently we read it because with Andres, we read this news. We're like monitoring a little bit like trade and investment data concerning ASEAN countries. And recently there was this news all over the media saying that the US has become the first trade partner of ASEAN. Like this year, a few months ago, or 2 months ago. balancing or contradicting the tendencies of the last 5 years or so, where China was really becoming like the black hole where the gravity horizon and the horizon line was falling on the neighbor economies, no? So are you really, I don't know, I mean, I'm really curious about that, in the sense that you were talking about winners and losers, I mean, winners of the decoupling scenario, winners and losers. Of course, you have Indonesia, you have Malaysia, they are winning some opportunities. You have Mexico, they are winning too. You have Spain, who is winning too. They are receiving a lot of investment for geopolitical reasons. But here in Latin America, I don't feel we are object of courtship. We are object of pressures. Yesterday, we received a seminar like this one. It was the Chilean ambassador, and she openly admitted that Chile is in this navigating, and she used the same word, navigating the geopolitical scenario. This, marine metaphor is very fashionable right now. She was saying that to navigate this new scenario, actually, we want it or not, maybe it's not a conscious strategy, maybe it wasn't a real decision itself, it's more like a path dependent, but Chile has chosen the US side. And we're talking about key decisions and very concrete decisions about technology. This trade war is actually a technological war. We were talking about some trade products, not all of them. We're talking about the green transition, no? Like new energies, renewable energies, and semiconductors mainly. No? That means cars, or panels, computers, etc. So we are assisting to a decoupling, not the international economy, international order, but more like a decoupling of some technological key standards. So the competition now is to define which are the industrial and technological standards that are going to dominate some countries and some other countries not. So here in Chile, the government had to choose to back the US side of the decoupling in technological choices, mainly the passports and IDs, where we have a contract that was allocated to produce them. It was allocated to a Chinese company, and then it was canceled, and then it was allocated to a French one. Because Chile has this, is participating in a scheme with the US, so we don't need a visa to get to the US. Basically, we have this biometric technology in the passport, so the US didn't want it to fall to a Chinese company, etc. So we have to contradict our tradition of open economy model, international open economic development model, to do something that was totally illogical and legally undefendable. No? So this is like a first precedent of how this openness of the China economy is being nuanced and is being contradicted by this geopolitical tension, and without being an object of courtship, as you say, but more like a victim of it. And the second trip was, of course, maybe you heard about it, the Trans-Pacific Internet Cable, which in 2016, the original route was connecting Chile and Shanghai and China, and then it was a lot of, it's very long to explain. Carlos, he knows better than me, he can explain later the details. But
It's okay.
I mean, now we are starting to know what happened. No? After 2 or 3 years, now we are starting to know what happened. And actually, it was another imposition by the US, pressure of the US to the Chilean government, who decided to abandon the original route, which made far more sense at that time, 2016, before the pandemic, before everything. And instead of that, we choose the Australian route, which economically and technologically doesn't make any sense, because Australia is not an significant trade partner of Chile, China it is, etc. So you see what I mean? Like this idea of winners and losers of the risking of the conflict scenario. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, in some days I will feel like we are unlucky with South America because I only see pressure from the US and I don't see much effort to seduce us, as you see in Southeast Asia. But on the other hand, I feel lucky enough because we don't have military bases, foreign military bases as we do in Southeast Asia. We don't have neighbors who are participating actively in the arms race.
Territorial disputes. And you don't have Taiwan issue.
So the Taiwan and South China that is unresolved long-term dispute. So yeah, I mean, this is more like my global thoughts about it. The hedging strategy makes sense in this post-pandemic scenario. Maybe we should try to think in other ways, like more like technological war, technological decoupling, in concrete foreign policy and industrial policy decisions that the states have to take, and this decision will be under high pressure from China and the US. So it's more like a case-by-case approach, more than strategy itself. You know what I mean? From Latin America, we can see improvisation all over the face. In ASEAN, we see some rationalization of strategies, but I'm a bit skeptical about it, especially about this very schizophrenic scenario. You have like a military defense hegemony of the US and economic hegemony of China. So okay, last question, very global question is ASEAN is really continuing this pre-pandemic concept of hedging strategy, or we are like more like vanguarding in the US in terms of military and more in terms of technology / trade and investment?
All right, yeah. Thank you so much. All these are very difficult, very tough, sharp questions. So, and they cover many things. So let me just respond, given the time and all that, not knowing whether there will be other questions. So let me just respond by 3 points. So first point is that ASEAN countries, Southeast Asian countries, as the post-colonial states, right? We do have another thing in common, right? Which is that we were all victims of centuries of Western colonization. We were victims of decades-long Cold War politics. So we knew what big power politics means. For us, US-China rivalry is not new. It's the latest version of the big power politics. So it is in our DNA to know that it's always very tricky and risky. Wrong move, history repeats, will be suffering. We do not want to go through that. Which is why the current approaches that I use 3 points to sum up. You can use hedging, you can use any other terms, it doesn't matter. Those are the things that instinctively and strategically, bearing in mind also we have lots of domestic problems. We want to do that, not because of it is the first best policy, it is ideal policy. We are pragmatic enough to know that there is no such thing as ideal or first best in the real world. No such thing. What you can do is what we call as acceptable or not acceptable. That's the first point. Second point is that whatever you do, whatever your position, there is always different dimensions, desirability and feasibility, right? Desired because of all the benefits that we mentioned, but we know that what is desired might not be feasible. So a few months ago, actually, had an article, a short article in ANU, Australian National University's publication, East Asia Forum. I talk about feasibility and desirability of hedging. Hedging is desired because of it is a most acceptable arrangement. There are some drawbacks, uncertainty, right? But overall, it still provides more space than the alternative, right? Putting all eggs in any power's basket is not acceptable under the current scenario. You are going to expose yourself to a greater risk. So it's undesirable. So the current arrangement is desirable, but we all know that it might not be feasible, and hence come with the third point. So we don't have to go through international relations classes to know what are structural, right? Neoclassical words, we talk about structural and domestic and all that. We know that there are certain things that are structural is beyond anyone's desire, right? Whether those what if scenario that I mentioned is beyond our control. How US and China would react before this November and after this November, we are nervous because we knew precisely you expressed so well that it will affect us. Southeast Asia is 10 times more nervous than Latin America and all that. As you mentioned, geography is a big plus for you. Geography is a plus and also a minus, right? I like US political scientist and also a China expert, David Shabao, right? He has a book a few years ago. The title was Where Great Powers Meet, right? I think that's very catchy, right? But it shows almost everything about how geography is the reason why the great powers, we Southeast Asia, smaller countries, we are not inviting them. You know, big powers won't get invitation to come. They will just come. And when they come, you get the benefits, but you also get the risk and the dilemma. I'm so glad I have that slide with the 3 points. I did not stop at benefits, right? I do have 2 other points that show we knew that it's beyond our control. Courtship, I mentioned benefits. I also mentioned no free lunch. We all knew that. Whether in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, we know that those are beyond anyone's control. But what are you going to do? Are you going to say yes to everything, say no to everything? Impossible. You do it selectively, right? Based on your own judgment and circumstances. And therefore, some countries welcome AUKUS. Some countries say, let's not do that or move too fast, right? So everybody will have their own responses. But again, I think we are realistic enough to know that there are many things that are beyond us. And as we are getting the benefits, because we could, we also need to do a lot of plans B. And plans B are not static. Right? You know human nature. We are very adaptive. You are very adaptive. Certain things that you worry or say no a few years ago, today you will say yes. Because what? Scenario change, right? And again, I would say that because of that, Southeast Asia, because of geography, because of history, we are the front line of the middle state dilemma, right? We are the next most likely victims or targets. When war happens, when first bullet or first missile is being used, most likely in Southeast Asia, either South China Sea or Taiwan. So I think our consideration, the 3-point consideration in all the slides, do offer something might be relevant in one way or another. When diversification, inclusive one, isn't it logical for all countries? It is not perfect. There is no perfect. But you work on plans A, but you also need to prepare some plans B, and again, the more the merrier. And I do think that in the future, I do see Latin American countries and Southeast Asia countries will come together more and to maximize economic arrangement, cooperation. But there might be other dialogue and all that. FIALAC did not go anywhere, but I think in future it will be revived. FIALAC will not be Asia-Europe cooperation, but again, it's not about either or, right? It's not about we choose here or there, but we will say that the more the merrier, which is why the Prime Minister said that we are also joining BRICS, or in the process of joining the BRICS. Thailand is doing that, Vietnam is doing that. When we are doing joining BRICS, we are not cutting or downgrading our existing partnership with the US or Western dominated. It's not either or. In fact, the more the merrier. Why is that? Inclusive diversification. Go hand in hand with fallback position. Right? The more you diversify, the more fallback space you have. Is that guaranteed? Nothing is guaranteed. You don't know that. I hope I answered your question.
It's great because nobody is asking Chile to join the BRICS. It would be very unpopular. I mean, this is a good comparison. No, we can discuss. Anyone wants a question?
Someone have a question?
I don't have actually a question, but just a comment.
Sure.
To congratulate you, it's a very informative and very clear exposition of the situation. If I may add, in the last, during the time of President Piñera, we used the concept active neutrality.
Active neutrality.
Yes, and right now it's more second, inclusive diversification, which is strategic independence.
Yeah.
That's what we always say. And we are, it's more or less the same. We would like to balance our relations with China and the United States. Maybe if you, in short time, you can answer more, or your opinion would be the turning point in the Indo-Pacific to declench a conflict between the two major powers, Taiwan,
Philippines.
Philippines will be over the South China Sea, right? Yeah. So that was mentioned. Yeah, that was mentioned kind of like featured prominently when we talk about military chessboard, right?
Yeah.
I think if US and China are going to war, it will be over one or both of these, right? In fact, when A happen, B might happen as well because you are talking about the same theater.
Right.
Those are structural, right? Highly undesirable. Nobody wants to end. But again, all of us know that it's beyond us. We can declare 1,000 times. We are neutral.
Confucian.
We are not taking sides and all that. We are all pragmatic enough to know that when that moment happen, it's not going to up to us. So, but are we going to therefore, knowing that that might happen, that possible won't happen, and therefore we preempt that to happen? Southeast Asia answer would be same with the other Middle States answer. Are you crazy, right? You are not going to preempt, right? You're not going to preempt because of that will push, that will become inevitable. At the moment, I will say that it's likely. And some will say that, some moment will say that it's getting more likely. But are you going to therefore preempt before that happens? You need to, now putting all eggs in one basket, impossible. You will actually hedge more deeply. And you are already seeing, countries are doing more and more. Vietnam will be a perfect example to see how, and sometimes in Southeast Asia, we joke about today in Southeast Asia, perhaps in the world, Vietnam is the master of hedging.
Yeah.
There are masterfully hedging in one way or another to reduce, not eliminate risk. Risk will always be there, but they eliminate, they mitigate, not eliminate, sorry, they mitigate. Impossible to eliminate, but they do mitigate, and they do in the process and maximize the benefits, right? In economic and also strategy, they are among the biggest with diplomatic and also economic wise. And last year, which country witnessed the visit of the President of the United States and President of China at the same time? They didn't even have to be invited. They played, right? And then with all the courtship, you see more in Vietnam than others. And what Vietnam has been doing, make it very clear, they are so pragmatic in so many ways, right? Number one, you see that with the China factor getting more and you are seeing big adjustment on Vietnam, but without overdoing it, right? They are adjusting since 2010, especially, right? At least, even earlier, they were planting the seeds, but 2010, I think, was the turning point. You see 2010 onwards, Vietnam is pragmatically upgrading, forging and upgrading defense strategic partnership with former enemy, US, right? But without turning it into alliance. Is that necessary, turning into alliance? Not necessary, right?
China.
Yeah, China also, right? Thousands of years, right? So therefore, they have we call a fallback, right? Fallback meaning you need to have an offset, right? Offset, you need to do something that might seem contradictory, but they offset the risk because why? If you move into one direction without offsetting, you expose to greater risk. For example, to use the example that we spoke earlier on, right? If a US-Vietnam defense partnership keep growing so far that upgrading into alliance, yeah, it will maximize security, but it will also expose the risk to China will become what are you up to, right? And they knew from geography and history that China will be there forever. So they're doing a lot of offsetting, right? What kind of offsetting? They use party-to-party relationship, right? With China to show the signal that we are not they use Defense White Paper 2019 to signal the 3 no 4 no policy. They are not departing from that policy. And they are also not just having military partnership exercises with United States. They are also doing something similar with China on non-traditional security, lots of military exercises with China, despite precisely because of South China Sea, right? And in fact, last year, and thanks to Malaysia's arrangement with China, Malaysia and China, right? We are one of the last in Southeast Asia to have defense military exercises with China, very late, 2015, 2016. But there are lots of progress. In fact, before COVID, there was the exercise called Aman UE, right? Aman in Malay means security or peace, right? Aman. UE is a Chinese word, means friendship, exactly. So the name of that bilateral military exercises is very interesting. It shows what we want. China wants friendship. Malaysia is willing to provide, just like other ASEAN countries. But as smaller countries, we want Aman, peace. You don't harm me because of South China and other, right? We are signaling, right? We are signaling. So we started with bilateral. Then at some point, 2017 or so, we invited Thailand, US Treaty Airline, to join Aman UE, become trilateral. And it stopped because of COVID, because of change of government in Malaysia. And last year it was resumed. And when it was resumed, Aman UE military exercises expanded from 3 nations to 6 nations. Who are the members? Cambodia, Laos, not surprising. the sixth member, it was Vietnam. Vietnam joined the Arman-UE military exercise with China. Perfect example about fallback position. Perfect example, the offset that we talk about. Vietnam has to upgrade relationship with both US and China in more than one way. Because why? Things are uncertain. You do not want to going into one direction that make you a pusher and place all eggs in one basket. Then you are going to expose to a greater risk that even beyond your control you are aware. I hope yeah. And then the final point I guess to make is that these three elements, whatever you call it, the good thing is they are not either or, right? In fact, we are all doing all three at the same time. You cannot just do one, right? You do at the same time. And this is because of the survival pragmatism. You need to do that without saying anything.
Of middle countries.
It's not up to us. That will be the first to face.
We're right now. Thank you very much, Professor. I really enjoyed the system. And then later in the dinner, I will discuss a little bit more about.
You can have bilateral or mini lateral.
Yeah. I have some ideas of this scheme. So we can. I think we go further, right? Maybe here we can put it. That's okay. We can
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Gracias. Thank you.
Gracias también.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ya, yo quiero ir así. Ay, sí.
This is Valparaiso City. I thought you would have done this.